So we must do two things, two great things together, to encompass that enormous new view that lies before us, but to encompass it within the framework of science, to see it within the whole categorical framework of science, and to see that these two are not separate, but that they are wedded. The bigness of the idea, the newness of the idea, the greatness of it is one with the structure of science, the structure of being itself. So let's just recap tonality-wise what we were seeing yesterday when we came together for the first time. And we were seeing really that the office of the science of love is to give a place value to everything. That love includes everything and gives to everything its place value within the context of the plan of love, the design of love. And so we were seeing really that we can just love that second record of creation, that there won't be anything left within us that wants to cut it out of the context of the whole and say this is negative, and can't you see it doesn't belong to the priestly record, it's the Jehovistic record, and it's a sense of the that tribal warring God of Jehovah that is presenting a picture that is negative and baneful, and instead of the good of the first record, the goodness, the unfoldment of good, the evolution of good, the evolution of spirit of the first record, we will lose that sense. We'll find that sense disappearing, that feels there is a duality there, a two-ness there, something that we don't want to look at. I remember, I think it was in the Genesis tapes, Max Kapler was saying that he hesitated always to present something about the claim of there being a duality or the claim of the second record. He said, because after the class, no one looks at you. They just all walk out of the classroom. No one ever says, oh, that was a wonderful presentation. Oh, thank you for sharing that with us. But they just kind of all walk out and don't want to have an eye-to-eye contact. They hope that the next day you'll change your subject. And I think that we will be freed of that feeling of duality and freed of the sense of having to grapple with two values. That's really what that is, thinking that there are two sets of values. Whereas actually the first and second records want to show us that there is only one set of values, and that we can conceive or perceive of those values in either one of two ways. But that there's never more than one set of values. The 7 and the 4 are our values, and we will see that actually all that is going on in the first record and in the second record are those values. Working out everything, working out the claim that there could be any other values. So I just have here this statement that Mrs. Eddy makes in Some Objections Answered, which I think is so apropos for this feeling, that we want to cut out anything, as though it would be a a better Bible if we could take the second record out, that if we could just go from the first record and then go right on. And Mrs. Eddy had this claim to deal with in respect to the textbook too. She had so many criticisms of her textbook, as you know, and she could see that the real problem was the temptation to take something out of its context. That her teaching was criticized because individuals, theologians, the critics of her day would take a statement out of the whole context of the teaching, would take a paragraph out. And so she handled that in the chapter Some Objections Answered, which had originally, been called a reply to a clergyman, because it was this battle with the clergy over her teaching and the criticism of it. And she says on page 341 of Science and Health, these criticisms are generally based on detached sentences or clauses separated from their context. You see, it's when we take the second record out of the context of the whole. The Bible is a whole context. The Bible and the textbook together are a whole context, and would make no sense if something would be taken from that context. She says, even the scriptures which grow in beauty and consistency from one grand root, you hear that? Like a tree growing from one grand root, appear contradictory when subjected to such usage. Jesus said, and this seems at first to make no sense, well, why does she say this? Jesus said, "Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God." Truth, she says. So, that blessed are the pure in heart, it's the sixth beatitude, and has all to do with consciousness and the purity of consciousness, and seeing that the purity of consciousness is a consciousness of the categories of God, of the constituent nature and operation of God, and that this is a purity of heart meaning consciousness. And what is the blessing on that consciousness? It sees God. When you look through a grid of consciousness of the categories, you see God. So as though to say that those things that you want to take out, and which you would snip out of the context of the whole, when left in the context of the whole, and looked at through the purity of a consciousness of science, you only see God. The second record is God. Everything is God. So we just begin to see the interconnectedness of that second record with everything else in the whole context of being. So we said that the office of love and the science of love is to give place value to everything. Love is that which says, I can bring out my blessing no matter what the situation is, no matter what the circumstances are. And so that second record presents us really with the representation of a set of circumstances that we are all working through. It's the claim of a mortal condition. The claim of working out something through time, of a becomingness, working out the mortal proposition. And love says, I can take that in, I can work with that, I can show you the blessing in it, because I cannot be deprived of my manifestation or object. And we've seen that as the focus shifts then from the 6,000-year period to the 7,000-year period, that we will begin to view those values or those concepts. We will begin to view those concepts of the first and the second record of creation not so much as contradictories. You see, mind and mortal mind, spirit versus matter, soul over and against the sense testimony. Not viewing them as contradictories, but we will begin to see that those two records are presenting an equipollence, a relationship of balance, a balance of statement, a perfect balancing of a statement. So that if we look at them as contradictories, we would see one is true and the other is false. One is true and the other is false. 7 great truths and 7 great falsities. But when we give them the greater setting of love and love's system, then there is a resolution to equipollence, to oneness, and that love never leaves the standpoint of oneness and the allness of God. So that that sense of them being contradictories is resolved into oneness. In which way? In the way perhaps that we could state, as we have before, as though the first record would say, I am mind. And the second record would be that same I am. The first record is the I am, and the second record is the I am. The I am saying, I am mind in the first record. And in the second record, I am not mortal mind. I am spirit. I am not matter. So that you feel that this is a positive thing, a beautiful thing, that being would declare itself in a language that is adapted to each one of us working out the claim of there being more than one mind, more than one substance, more than one reality. That we are met exactly where we are. So the second record brings to light the same truth as the first record. The very same truth brings the same light, the light of mind, the light of spirit, soul, principle, life, truth, and love, but in a different language of consciousness, adapted by love to speak to that consciousness which is grappling with the claim that there could be another reality, the claim of there being two. And so this is such a loving thing, and those two records really show us the logic of Christian Science. They depict the logic of Christian Science in operation, which enables us to see that there is not a two-valued logic, right? Not two sets of values, but a one-valued, dual, conceptual logic that resolves the contradiction between good and so-called evil. So the first record is a great statement that says, mind is a value. The value is mind. Spirit is a value. You know, with value we mean that a value is that which has substance behind it, has reality behind it, that which is real. The issue seems to be what is real and what is unreal, reality and unreality. And this is what the Christ is working out. If we look, for instance, at that Christ translation, the two translations on page 115 and 116 in the textbook, you can see that the issue is so much one of reality and unreality. What is real and what is unreal? And of how the first translation is working on consciousness to uncover what is unreal. You see, and that's what you have in the first degree. You really have the first translation, that translation from God, out from God, to man, to idea. And as that first translation is working on consciousness, coming to consciousness, that's what the Christ does. It comes, it is coming to save, to heal, to bless, to retranslate back into the original mind, the one mind. The translation of immortal mind is coming to retranslate mortal mind back into the divine mind, its original. That what is uncovered is unreality. So we see what is unreal. I can already feel what's going on. There is a sense that unreality is real in us, huh? Oh, there's a reality called unreality, huh? And this is the what is going to be broken through by love. That unreality is not a reality. That we'll see Mrs. Eddy's own experience through her own words in a moment and touch on that. But you see that the first record is presenting us with those values, that mind is a value, spirit is a value, meaning that behind mind, spirit, soul, principle, life, truth, and love is reality. Is that which exists, which has existence, which has substance, that which is divine, that which is eternal. A value is that which is incorporeal, divine, supreme, infinite. These are infinite values. And in the second record, we have a great statement that says, mortal mind is not a value. Mortal mind is not a reality. Mortal mind has no substance. Matter is not a value. Sense testimony, corporeality, the body, all that which you think is substantive has no value. It isn't a value. Personal sense, material organization, material systems are not values. Mortality is not a value. Mortal consciousness, mortal man are not values. And the opposite of love has no value at all. It isn't anything. It isn't something in and of itself. But that has to be worked through. It's a working through. It's a retranslation process within the individual consciousness that the Christ is working out. The Christ works with each individual consciousness. That's the office of the Christ, is it not? To translate to the point of the individual, right? To translate the principle to individual idea or individual consciousness. And so each one of us has a life experience which emulates the working out of this proposition of the I am and the I am not. Can you see how intimate these first two records are to us. They are our life experience. And the second record wants to show us what isn't real and what doesn't work, and in which way, and why it doesn't work. So love says, look, I come to every level of consciousness. I come to every plane of consciousness. I come to you no matter where you are in your understanding, on your way. I'm the one, the infinite one, and always translating myself to you, translating myself to you as forms. I translate myself always as forms of oneness, ideally adapted, perfectly adapted. I come in whatever language you need in order to understand what is reality, what is the real. So I come in a language of consciousness that speaks to you. This is the office of the Christ, to individualize the divine principle to each one. Isn't that a miracle, quote unquote, a wonder, the wonder of love, to be able to do that? Whatever level of understanding we're on, and no matter where we are, love says, I adapt my language, the one language of spirit, to the spiritual language of your consciousness. So we have a great fundamental presentation of that with the first and second records of creation. And so what we have seen further is that love knows only success, is working out only success, cannot be deprived of its manifestation, its objectification, its object, so that whether we think, we may think, I can set a goal, I can achieve that goal, I can reach that goal, I can make it happen. Whether we think we can do that, or on the other hand, we may think, I don't know what the goal is, I have no goals, I can't set goals, I don't even know what a good goal would be. Or we may think we have a goal, but we don't know how to reach it. We don't know whether it's the right thing to do or how to get there. All of these claims are aborted. All of our attempts to reach our own goals, you see, set our own goals, or have somebody else set them for us, and don't we do that? If we don't set a goal for ourselves, sometimes we let other people set our goals for us. Sometimes we let the world set our goals for us. We let our families set the goals for us. We let society set the goals for us. We think we have to fulfill goals that have been set by society, or that we have to meet expectations that others have set for us, or that have always been fulfilled by individuals who happen to belong to the same classifications that we belong to. And so we classify ourselves, and then having been put into a classification, there's a certain program of goals that belong to fulfilling your role in that classification, and all of this stuff. And love says, I just don't allow any of that to succeed. I don't allow anything to succeed except the goals that I have set, except the goals that love has set. And so love circumvents every less than ideal situation. everything that is less than love's ideal, everything that does not serve the purposes of love's ideals. And you know, there's not just one goal, but there are many goals in life experience. There are sub-goals and sub-sub-goals, sub-goals, goals nested within goals, that all serve to the bringing out of the one great goal and plan of love, the design of love. And love knows how to circumvent anything that would not serve the purposes of love's goals. And so love causes those things to fail. Love makes those things fail. Anything that would prevent the fulfillment of love's ideal fails. And this is success, is it not? So that we cannot fail to succeed. Yeah. You can't fail to succeed, and you cannot succeed in failing. Really. That's what the law of life, truth, and love is saying, and life, truth, and love is stamping every individual consciousness with that pattern, with that code, the code of success, the pattern of success is there. Behind us, behind our development, behind our evolution, behind, therefore, our life experience, is the law of success, of life, truth, and love. You know, I know I've said this before, but when you first look at those laws, for instance, the law of life, truth, and love, the accentuation is on life, and one feels that because it is that impulsion and that drive and that acceleration of life to bring forth the trueness of being, the one being, the fulfillment of the one being within us. And yet the more we go on, the more one feels, gosh, yes, that's true, but at the foundation, at the basis, underlying that is love, that the real accentuation from the standpoint of the 7,000-year period is love, that love is life, truth, and love. Love is that which is impelling life to impel, to accelerate forth everything that is meant to be in our experience and as our experience. Well, so we have that success, and the first record obviously shows us that the success of the impulsion of life, truth, and love, bringing forth in its perfection that first record of creation, that true statement of what spiritual creation is, of what the true evolution and development of creation is. There's no negative thing, no negative connotation in the whole of that first record of creation. But we also see it in the second record, that this too is a depiction of success. And the second record is showing us the impact of the true record on the claim of a false sense of creation. It's showing us the impact of the timelessness of the first record on the claim of time, which is depicted by the second record. The second record depicts a time sense, and we will see there too that it's a success story, because whenever the mortal concept is going out, is dissolving, is disappearing, this is success. And that's what the second record shows. And so we will find there something else about love, something else about that success, that the success of love is tied to love's equifinality. Do you remember the equifinality of love that we have talked about many times before now? Each time we meet, I think I can't help but to expose you in some new way to that marvelous term of equifinality, which means what? It means that no matter where you start, no matter where you are, you cannot fail to reach the goal. You hear the success of love. That the goal will be reached from whatever starting point you take. Now, we're all at different starting points. There are no two starting points alike. This is the wonder of individuality. This is the wonder of the workings of the Christ, working with each individual consciousness, that here and there we may meet individuals who we feel we are close to on our way and in our standpoint, but actually there are no two individuals alike, and that's the meaning of being an individual, that each one is unique. And so each one is at a different place on that way of life, on that working out of the proposition of reality and unreality. And so love says, don't compare yourself to someone else. You are unique. You are my idea. And you are on the course. You are on the way. And that you will reach that goal. And that it doesn't matter where you are, what the conditions are. This is what the second record shows. It doesn't matter really, and the second record shows the nth degree of demoralization, and of depicts a sense of total ignorance, so to speak, and it's as though love would say, no, it doesn't matter. I'm there, and you are going to reach the goal. Why is that? Why is that? Love's equifinality is that which says that you cannot get off of the course. You cannot get off of the course. You remember when we talked about equifinality before, we saw really that this is a concept that they have proven to exist throughout nature. Apparently in the biological world, in the realm of nature, it is seen that, shall I give the old example? Where's Bob? You remember Bob?
Yeah. It's the false start theory.
Yes.
The mouse, two mouses.
Yeah.
One goes to, he jumps the gun and then goes zigzags.
Yes.
And the other one goes straight, and they both get there at the same time.
Yeah, yeah. So there's a course. Say they take a group of mice, and they follow these mice through their lifetime, and they may see that at the beginning of the course of that lifetime that there are several mice that overshoot the goal. That is, they don't take the direct course, the normal course of a rat's life, but they may overshoot the goal. Others may undershoot, may have a false start. They may not be as successful or appear to be as successful at the beginning. Or somewhere along that course, you may have those who fall short of the course, say illness comes in or some kind of deprivation in their intake. Perhaps they're not fed the proper things that are necessary for a rat to live a normal rat's life. And yet what they find is that the members of that species and that group eventually come back onto the course of normality, and they come back onto the course exactly where they would have been if they'd stayed on the course. That nothing is lost. Can you hear it for your own life? As though love would say, it doesn't matter what the circumstances are. It doesn't matter. Don't think that I depend on your education, on your background, on your race, on your status in society, on your financial well-being. None of this matters. None of this matters. There is a course, and even if it looks like you fall short or you overshoot, that there's just one course. And love causes everything to adhere to that course. I was thinking about how that was possible, and suddenly I had the awareness or the sense of the tolerance of love, of the flexibility of love. So say you have a course that goes along a straight line, and yet you see that there's some veering off of that course, sometimes above the line, sometimes below, coming back, and so forth. As though love would have a certain tolerance. You see, the line goes right through, but love has a flexibility and never allows us to go beyond that tolerance, beyond that flexibility, so that we're always within love's field of tolerance, always within love's range of tolerance, no matter what we go through, no matter what we seem to experience. And that love uses everything, can integrate everything into that picture and that pattern of success. Love says it's all right. It's all right. And it doesn't depend on your moral sense, your sense of feeling I have to do right, I have to be right, I have to be good, be a good Christian, be a good person, do the right thing. You see, it's so much bigger than that. It isn't being a good little boy and a good little girl. It's just the fact of being that our experience is governed by love, by divine love, and by the workings of the Christ idea. That this is our destiny is success, and it's success all along the way. And love is the attractor in the field. Let's forget that marvelous sense that if we seem to veer off of the course, to get off of the track, love holds us within that field of tolerance, the field of its attraction, and brings us back again to the perfection of love's ideal. Brings us back to exactly where we would have been if we had stayed on the course, precisely on the course. This is all managed by, it's all regulated by love, by love's homeoraisa, the positive feedback of love, and the homeostasis, the negative feedback of love. So that the love's homeoraisa is that which sets the goal. Love sets the goal. And that goal has with it a course that is a flow. It's the flow of love that is carrying us along right to the goal without interference. If there seems to be an interference, then, if there seems to be a veering off of that direct flow of the course to love's final goal, then we would see that love has the homeostasis, love's negative feedback, which is able to correct that course. So that for love, it's an error-friendly environment, isn't it? Love doesn't make a big deal out of an error. It's an error is not a reality to love. It has no reality. It's only that which is calling forth a different aspect of love, the aspect of love to be able to correct and to govern. You know how she says divine love corrects and governs man? Well, what does that mean? That's a beautiful cybernetic statement, that there is a cybernetic process going on of being regulated, that we are regulated, and that if we seem to deviate or to vary from the idealness of love's course, love brings us back to that ideal again. So this all belongs to the equifinality of love. Well, I can't help but mention too love's method being a method of pattern across scale. And we see that, I think we mentioned it yesterday, that we have with the days of creation then a pattern, a fundamental pattern, then which is scaled by love. What does that mean? It is that timeless pattern adapts itself. Whenever you have a scaling process, you have an adapting to a further individual set of circumstances, and so you have the timeless scale being adapted to a time scale. You have that which is eternal, which the first record shows us that which is of an eternal nature, as able to govern all time. That the eternal is governing all time, all scales of time. So with the rest of the Bible, with the rest of what we see as the Christian Science textbook, really with the 1,000-year periods, you see that very same thing going on, that love is scaling itself to each 1,000-year period. It is scaling itself. That one pattern, in other words, is translating itself. Scaling would be a translating itself individually to each 1,000-year period, translating itself to each individual consciousness. And if it is translating itself to the individual consciousness, it is also translating itself to the collective consciousness and to the universal consciousness, so that the whole of time is stamped with the timelessness of that pattern. The timeless reality of the first record of creation really stamps the whole of time and is leavening time with timelessness. Leavening time, therefore, taking out of time the mortal concept, the time concept, retranslating time into timelessness. We feel this in many different ways. I think the whole world feels that time is speeding up, that time is going out, that we often speak of history drawing to a close, that we're coming to the finality of something, the close of something. What is this? This is the Christ working, the Christ idea, the Christ translation, working on the whole of consciousness, working individually, working on the individual consciousness, and then working on the collective and on the universal, and impelling, really, the analysis, uncovering, and annihilation of anything else but the first record and its timeless values of reality. So the Christ is always working out its translation through the method of analysis, uncovering, and annihilation. You're familiar with those terms, huh? And what we would see is that if we look at that first record of creation, that we have the true analysis of reality. That the first record gives us the true analysis of that which is real, the perfect record of that which is real. This true analysis uncovers what? The unreality of the second record. Is that clear? The unreality of the claim of a false sense of creation is uncovered. It's uncovered through what we call the law of opposites. There's something we don't like to hear. I don't like that, to hear that there's a law of opposites. But it's a wonderful thing if you don't just take the words, but you begin to realize what that is, that in any science, in any endeavor, be it music or mathematics or engineering or whatever one is close to in life, that when you take that subject, say, take the subject of music because it's so, I think, close to everyone. Everyone seems to love music. I haven't met anybody yet that doesn't love music. And so if you take the idea of music, the subject of music, and you want to understand music, you begin by analyzing music, don't you? You go to the principle of music. You begin to see what is music, what is it comprised of, what are the notes. Dorothy, help me because you use this so much. The values. What are the values of music? The tones. So I begin to find out what are the tones of music. What's a true A, a true C? What are the true tones? And how do those tones relate to each other? So I become aware of, say, what rhythm is, how tones can be given values time-wise and bring forth a rhythm, how tone and rhythm together bring forth a melody, that when all of the components are right in a melody, that you have harmony. Something like that. One begins to look into the subject, the science of music, to see what it is, and to immerse oneself in everything that one can find out about music, about what music is, the reality called music. This is analysis. This is the analysis. The moment I have wed myself to that true analysis of music, I know at once, automatically, what isn't music, don't I? Huh? And I hear something, and it's not a pure A. The tone is not a pure A, and you know that every tone has a certain number of vibrations to it, and am I correct? Is there a musician here that can help me with that? That each tone would have its own number of vibrations. If it is off by one or two or a few vibrations, it isn't a true A. The more truly one I am with what a true A is, I know at once what isn't a true A, what isn't a true B or a C or whatever the note is. This is the law of opposites. That by the law of opposites, that which isn't real is uncovered. Is it uncovered as a second reality, as another reality next to music? No. It's just uncovered as not being music, as being unreal. This is the relationship, a relationship that we have between the first and the second records, that the true analysis of God, beginning with God, seeing what God is, what that sevenfold nature of the Word is, what that fourfold operation of God is, uncovers at once what is not God, what is not the Word, what is not the sevenfold Word, what is not the fourfold calculus. So that you get that sense of the I am and the I am not, that this is another way of looking at that is to see the sense of a true analysis, always bringing forth a true uncovering. That which is uncovered is that which is unreal. And this is the relationship you find in the Christ translation, that as you begin with the first translation, as you begin with God, as you come out from the divine principle, as life, truth, and love, that principle begins to translate itself through soul, spirit, and mind. And through that first translation, we see that immediately there is the law of opposites working, that what is uncovered is the first degree. What is uncovered is, as she depicts the first degree, unreality. So the reality of the first translation uncovers the unreality of the first degree of the second translation. And then we say, well, how do we get rid of that which has been uncovered? What do we do with that which has been uncovered? And we see that the process of the Christ translation is not just twofold, but threefold, that there is an uncovering and then an annihilation. So how do we annihilate that which has been uncovered? By beating on it? By pounding it to death metaphysically? No. By staying with the true analysis. Just going right back to the true analysis. By staying with the principle of music. Musicians don't fall apart when they hear a bad note, do they? I mean, they may not like what they hear. They may, maybe they do, huh?
You're saying if you don't C sharp, you'll B flat.
But you can see that the method for dealing with that which is not aligned with the principle is to go back to the principle, to stay with the true analysis. That this has the power, it has the Christ power, really to cause the mistaken sense to disappear. And this is what you see in the second translation. That's why there is a movement from the first degree to the second degree, that something higher is raised up. You see that we move from depravity to a second degree of evil beliefs disappearing, so that we have transitional qualities now coming in. And finally, we have a third degree, which is called the spiritual degree. The third degree is understanding, and it is also called reality. So unreality is retranslated into reality. How? By looking at unreality and saying, oh, isn't that awful, and let's just try to overcome it and try to get the upper hand. That's the Cain and Abel story. And Abel being the second degree and Cain being the first degree. The second degree in and of itself as a human moral stance can never overcome the first degree. What is it that overcomes the first degree? The first translation. The translation of immortal mind. Going back to God, coming out from God, never taking one's eyes off of God, off of the categories of being, staying within the realm of science. This is how anything is resolved that appears to be not of the harmony of science. Well, actually, you have throughout the whole remainder of the Bible, throughout the whole remainder of the 1,000-year periods, then this third aspect of annihilation, that there is a disappearance. Those 1,000-year periods show us a disappearance of the false sense of creation, as the true sense of creation is appearing. We have always an appearing and disappearing experience, a touch of Christianity coming in, as the true record of creation is totally established. So in a way you get, with the true analysis, you get a sense of the Word. With the uncovering, with that which the true analysis uncovers, you have a sense of the Christ. And with the annihilation process, you have a sense of Christianity or love. And that annihilation process, love would rename. Love would say, actually, that's my spiritualization process, that I am working on the whole of consciousness, individually, collectively, universally, to bring out the spiritualization process. Love as spirit, and spirit as love.